This is the natural next step in the evolution of the helicopter gunship. After the Huey had weapons mounted on its sides, Bell Aircraft decided they needed a dedicated gunship design, and they came up with the Huey Cobra. Many components were similar to the Huey. You'll notice the tail is similar. The engine housing has changed a little bit with the doghouse in the middle. Short stub wings to mount weapons. Almost anything could have been carried by the Cobra. They carried miniguns, they carried rocket pods, they carried heavy cannon, an amazing mix of weaponry. The pilot and the gunner sat in the fighter-style cockpit. The Huey Cobra gunship normally carried a turret in the nose, which would have housed either a grenade launcher or a minigun, and the gunner would be able to control that turret left and right and up and down to suppress fire on the ground. When troops on the ground were in trouble and they needed close support, they wanted the Cobra to fly over their head. The North American F-86 Sabre, the aircraft that ruled the skies over North Korea. If you were an ace, chances are you flew an F-86. Senator John Glenn, when he was on temporary duty with the Air Force, flew an F-86. This aircraft represents one flown by Major Blessey, and you can see the kill markings, the red stars on the cockpit. F-86 was flown all over the world. Air forces all over the world were drawn to it. It was an amazing aircraft. It was flown by our allies in NATO. It was flown in the Middle East. It was flown in the Far East. Eventually, North American was so pleased with the aircraft that it devised a navalized version, the FJ-2 Fury, for carrier operations for the Navy. The F-6F Hellcat, designed and built by Grumman Aircraft, accounted for 75% of all the kills in the Pacific theater of World War II. Grumman is known to have a reputation for building rugged, strong, dependable naval fighter aircraft, starting with the Wildcat, working all the way up to the Tomcat. And they named all their fighters with a cat name: Wildcat, Hellcat, Tiger Cat, Tomcat. The two exceptions were the Cougar and the Panther. The Vought F-4U Corsair, big, rugged Navy fighter of World War II. The Navy had some problems with it when it first made its way out to the fleet, and it took the British Royal Navy to figure out the problem. The pilots were having trouble on their approach to the carrier. Because of the long nose, they couldn't see over and onto the deck of the carrier. So it took Royal Navy pilots to figure out that if they approached the carrier in a large arc turn, they could look over the side of the cockpit and see the deck and see the landing signal officer as he gave directions to the pilot trying to come home. You might recognize this aircraft from an earlier episode of Day Trip to History, namely the Wings of Freedom Tour. This is our old friend, the B-25 Mitchell. This is an H model. An early configuration of a gunship? Perhaps. 4 50 caliber machine guns forward pointing in the nose and a 75 millimeter cannon. It's reported that aircraft similar to this could tear a Japanese destroyer in half. There are pictures of Mitchells with machine guns in the nose and dual pairs of machine guns on the fuselage, everything pointing forward. So you have over a dozen 50 caliber machine guns backed up by a 75 millimeter cannon. Whatever this thing was pointed at got shredded. This is the Republic F-105 Thunder Chief. It's been called the Thud. It's been called the Lead Sled. This aircraft was originally designed to carry a nuclear weapon. It had a small bomb bay, and this aircraft was designed to do one thing: fly fast and deliver that weapon. In Vietnam, it was configured in the fighter bomber role, and it carried the war to the north. And it flew fast. Reportedly, pilots said that you could take a rock, throw it into the intake, and get sand out the back. The F-105 Thunder Chief was really never designed to be a dogfighter, but in the skies of North Vietnam, it had to defend itself Armed with an internal 20mm cannon and a Sidewinder missile, 105 Thunder Chiefs shot down 27 MiG-17s during the conflict. Pilots have a phrase, and the phrase is, speed equals life. The F-105 Thunder Chief, if it had the opportunity to light the burner, the pedals on that engine would open up, and this thing would just pull away. This is a Mark 82 Snake Eye, retarded delivery bomb. These fins would pop open in this cruciform shape, giving the aircraft the ability to fly in low and fast. And the fins would retard the bomb's flight, giving the aircraft time to get away and to not be affected by the blast. These types of aircraft weapons are still used today. Another aircraft from Republic Aviation, the P-47 Thunderbolt, affectionately called the Jug, the largest and most expensive single-engine piston fighter of World War II. The Thunderbolt was legendary for its ability to bring pilots home from combat. That large engine gave it amazing speed. It's reported that in a dive, they could reach speeds of close to 550 miles per hour. A lot of the pilots said they believed the Jug would go supersonic in a dive, but that was proved to be false because they said that as the air entered the pitot tube, which gave the aircraft its readings, would cause a malfunction. But it was fast and it was rugged. The British, who also flew the P-47, used to joke with American pilots that the best defense for the Yank was to climb inside and run around the fuselage so the Germans couldn't see him. The markings on this aircraft represent the 57th Fighter Group from Bradley Field. And as shown, this Thunderbolt served time in Italy in World War II. The New England Air Museum offers a number of exhibits for guests to interact in the world of flight. And these visitors are right now learning to fly Cessna 172s on the Microsoft simulator. And the young man in the middle is trying to land at Boston's Logan Airport, and the young man on the right is trying to land at Bradley International Airport. And the console at the far left is New York's LaGuardia. This is the Rolls-Royce Nene 2 jet engine, developed by the British and used in a number of their fighter aircraft. It was also adopted and used by the United States Navy for the F-9F Panther, and the British offered the design of this engine to the Soviets, who quickly took it and slapped it into the MiG-15. So you have the US F-9F Panther flying over the skies of Korea, chasing Soviet MiG-15s, and they're both using the same engine. This is a model of the Batson Aero Yacht, circa 1912. You have to admire the early pioneers of flight. This model represents a proposed transatlantic airliner. And what catches your eye is that it looks like a sailing ship with the spars and the rigging and the sail-like wings. But what really attracted me to this model was the porch. We're in the civilian wing of the exhibit at the New England Air Museum. Before the war, Sikorsky Aircraft made fixed-wing aircraft, flying boats, and of course Sikorsky is famous for helicopters. We'll focus on a number of aircraft in this wing. The helicopter behind me is a Sikorsky S-51. You might recognize it from the movie The Bridges of Toko-Ri, starring William Holden. And the rescue pilots off the aircraft carrier flew this type of aircraft. We'll focus next on this large flying boat. This rare bird is a 4-engine flying boat built and designed by Sikorsky Aircraft. It's called the VS-44A Excambian. It's the only surviving bird. Sikorsky built 3 of these aircraft prior to the war, and they were used as patrol aircraft. After the war, they fell into civilian hands. This is the only one left. The volunteers at the New England Air Museum restored this aircraft to this form as you see it. This particular aircraft at one time was owned by actress Maureen O'Hara.